the earth and how it works, and yet we still lack so much understanding. Really, the earth and how it works. We hear what yet we still lack so much. Scientists come up with and things like that. We're wonderful. But think about these questions. Yet we still lack so much. Here in a minute, and it's just it's spectacular. But God's basically like, who do you think you are? In a minute, and it's just and God starts asking rhetorical questions. But God's basically like, who do you think you are? In a minute, and it's just because God already knows the answers. But God gives you a chance. But we can observe two reasons why God would throw these at him. One, we can observe two reasons why God would be to show Job that there's a whole lot more going on. One, we can observe two reasons why God would be to help Job gain perspective on one, to see how big Job is, and to help Job gain perspective on one. Another reason, to see how big Job is, and to help Job gain perspective on one. Another reason, it also shows how big Job is, how Job gain perspective on one. Another reason, it also shows how big Job is, and how much Job being unknown relies on God for just Job, and how much Job being life. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Hmm. Very good. Mm-hmm. That's right. Very good. Very good. And it's pretty intense that God asks him, basically, who are you to bring me these questions? And he's doing this out of a whirlwind. So I got a feeling Job was quite humbled at that beginning. But God's response could have been a whole lot of things. I mean, you're talking about the God of the universe. He could have literally, snapped his fingers and Job could have disintegrated, at that moment. But God didn't do that. A lot of times, that's how we want God to treat our enemies or, the problems we face. We want God to snap his fingers and then our problems just melt away. But that's not how God does it. Things don't work out exactly our plan. God's response, instead of just destroying him and just allowing him to just be crushed, keep on allowing this stuff to happen, he starts posing questions. When you want to be when you're taking like a class on trying to be non-confrontational, like winning an argument, without causing a fight, one thing they talk about is ask questions. We're talking about Job. Hey. Is to go into it by asking questions and see and let them do the basically the defeat themselves through their own words. You know what I'm saying? So God starts asking him these rhetorical questions, and he lovingly and strongly corrected Job through these. God asked, "Do you know how big Earth is? Do you know how massive Earth is?" Now you're talking about, like I said, this is one of the oldest books in the entire Bible, if not the oldest. And of course, he had no perspective on the huge, enormous size of the earth, and better yet, the universe. But he says, "Do you know how massive the earth is? Do you know even how light works or where darkness comes from?" Those are pretty deep questions. If you really think about them. I mean, Joe, what if God asked you those questions right now? It would. It would. To think of a God that could speak something like that into existence, yet you can't even tell him, how big it is or how it even happens. So it's not even being able to create anything, but he's asking you these questions. Do you control the seasons? Yeah, I couldn't imagine. Job began to realize who he was talking to, and he couldn't answer. he chose to hold his tongue. We can take huge lessons off of that right there. If I learn to hold my tongue and resolve to trust the Lord, no matter what was thrown my way, I would be a much happier person. Instead, when problems come, I want to run my mouth. I want to fuss about it. And Job had fussed for a while, and he had leveled some, even some accusations toward God that he was really entirely unqualified to level, but he didn't fully realize that in the midst of all this pain. Every situation, as we know, is 10% situation and 90% what? Yeah, great. Both are absolutely correct. How we handle it. And how do we handle it? In order to handle things correctly, we've got to have the proper perspective. I mean, it's just like us, at the house. I can't speak for anybody else's life but ours. If we were left to our own devices trying to manage 4 children, which Mennonites do that like a pro. I don't get it. But they got like 20 kids, and they're running around like, I don't know. But, sometimes 4 kids, sometimes 4 kids seems absolutely exhausting. You're just trying to manage what each one needs individually, yet, collectively trying to do, big picture things like, teach them about, Jesus and help them with schoolwork and prepare them for school, things like that. And it seems really, really big. And if left to our own devices, I'm a pansy. I would just melt under the pressure because I couldn't do it, trying to manage work and home and this and that and the other. But perspective is the key, isn't it? Perspective on how this is going to be in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and trusting that God has your best interest at heart. If you really believe that God has the power to take you home one day, that He spoke this world into existence, that we have a heaven to look forward to, does it take Him by surprise when a child gets a bad grade? It might stress you out because you feel like you failed as a parent trying to, do something like this, try to get them up to par or whatever. Does it take you by surprise when, you get that ticket from Food City, from pulling out of Food City? Does it take you by surprise? It does, but really in the big picture, that is a drop in the bucket. And perspective on that, if I could maintain an eternal perspective on my finite life, I couldn't imagine how much more peace there could be. And we learn some of that through this. This speaks to me personally, just wanting to try to be more like that. Anyway, God asked some interesting questions in 38:16. The very intellect that many scientists brag about doesn't even exist without God allowing and creating it. God points to the intelligence of man, and he shows through these questions just exactly how much He's involved in the everyday processes of life. And he gave some examples of space and the grandeur of earth and things like that. And then he starts breaking it down to really small things. He starts talking about how He manages the animals. And that's beautiful. He just took it from a big picture to a small picture, a lesser life form, if you will. It's amazing. Job asked God, "Do you even understand, the animals around you?" He goes from 38:39 through 39:1 through 13 on some of the stuff that we're about to pass through now. God reminds Job that without any human help, He sustained the entire animal population, from birth. That he alone understands why donkeys are stubborn and ostriches don't fly, and why oxen are so hard to tame. That's pretty awesome. He really broke it down for Job because Job saw this stuff in front of him. Now, instead of something that he can't even wrap his head around, of the size of the earth and where, how light and dark works, he takes him to, the oxen that he may have tried to train to, plow his field. The donkey that he was trying to, use that was extremely stubborn, and maybe the ostriches that he had observed. But God reminds Job that he created these animals, and Job could certainly never even, imagine, think them up. So therefore, especially not, design them. Why was God telling him all this? Why was God bringing him from the huge to the finite? Anybody? Any thoughts? Well, we've already said it 100 times, and sorry for driving that into the ground. It's just through reading this lesson, it seemed like it screamed over and over about perspective. You know what I mean? It was just showing that perspective. Anyway, let me find where I was here. God was trying to broaden Job's horizons. Job came out of this with so much better understanding of how much God was actually doing all around him, from just the animals all the way to space. And we can gain perspective through the story. Sometimes, someone read the heads down excerpt on 24. It's grayed out in your commentaries.
Many of us say we want to experience God, but we don't look for His majesty. We travel life's path with our heads down, focused on the next step with our careers or families or retirement plans. Excuse me. But we don't really expect God to show up with divine wonder.
That's beautiful. Job, in the midst of his troubles, had his mind extremely inwardly focused. He was thinking about what God was allowing or doing to him. He was thinking about how he would like to see things happen differently. And many times that's where we're stuck. He didn't expect God to come down in a whirlwind and start giving him perspective. You get what I'm saying? He wasn't expecting God to just throw these questions at him that really broadened his horizons. He wanted God to just fix the situation. Or honestly, it sounded like he would much have preferred to die than deal with what he was dealing with. We don't expect God to show up. We say we do. We say we want God to move in our lives, but what we want is God to make us comfortable. We want God to move in a way that makes us feel better, not a way that necessarily humbles us. Pain humbles.
Amen.
Struggles humble. Traffic tickets humble. He was referring to me, I think. I couldn't imagine. Childbirth. How much that would humble one to feel completely out of control while that process is going on. It's just humility is so key when trying to speak to the Almighty. I mean, we're lucky enough, blessed enough, to even be able to pray to one like Him. And yet, sometimes we get so, That's what I love about the Psalms with David, because he would go from all this is horrible, and my bones are sore vexed, and oh Lord, you've done all this, and but then he'll follow it up. It's like he was broken, and then halfway through he got perspective, and then he started praising God. And it's just beautiful, because that's kind of how Job comes together here. Anyway, we'll keep on going.
I think that's how God does it to us. He brings out our praise because we finally stop focusing on Him instead of ourselves.
That's amazing that you'd say that. That just reminded me. Have you ever felt like your prayers were hitting, a wall? And then, sure, yeah. And then, like, there was a time where I was praying and praying, and it was incredibly, it was all about me. All about me. It was just, I was just like, oh God, help me with this. I need to get closer to you. Oh, me. And it wasn't, and then finally, when I had exhausted myself from praying for myself, thinking about myself, it was like just a still small voice said, hey, why don't you pray for somebody else? And at that second, as soon as I started praying for something beyond myself, the presence of God just filled the room. And it's just, and it was so beautiful. That helped me with perspective on prayer. It's amazing when it comes to needs. Be outwardly focused. Praying. We can be selfish in so many ways. And if our prayers are all about us, all we're doing is literally just being completely self-absorbed in that. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you brought that up. God alone possesses all power over humankind. During the accusations by his friends, Job defends himself, and he said that he had abstained. He was talking to his friends, and he says, I made a covenant with my eyes that, basically he'd chosen not to lust, not to look on another woman with lust, and that's a beautiful thing. Again, he was defending himself, and apparently he thought he had achieved a great goal there, which is for today we certainly it's a very difficult thing, but he had said, I have chosen to make this covenant with my eyes. I mean, how great would it have been if David had made the same covenant before destroying Uriah's life? How it would have been wonderful. Lust is a Christian killer these days. I don't know if anybody followed Ravi Zacharias. Anybody? And the horrible things that happened there, and we've heard many other stories of that. And because lust creeps in, and if it's left alone in its little black box or in the corner, then it'll destroy a Christian's life. It absolutely will. Well, it
Power brings the greed.
Mm.
And so when they think they're more powerful than God, or their ministries as equal to God, then this lust comes in. Because how do pastors forth? Money and lust. Those two things, Satan knows exactly what to hit them with.
Yeah, but I mean, even that is excellent. It's just all the way down to the poorest person, to the person with all the riches. Lust is a major problem. Whether they're lusting after the opposite sex, or they're lusting after that car, or this, that, and the other. Lust is a major problem. And unfortunately, when someone has the authority or the means to unfortunately, when they have more availability for that to become bigger, their heart's lust is shown more, and that's so sad. We all know about the scandals of the the Catholic priests, how many were, with the choir boys and all that stuff. Just horrible, horrible stuff. Yes.
But who was the first luster?
Well, that would be Satan himself.
King of the world.
There you go.
So what did he jump in the middle of this world?
Lust. The big old bucket of it.
That's the thing.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
How he entraps people.
Absolutely. Entrapping is a perfect word there. Perfect word.
So if you're lusting after something and you're not fully seeking God's will,
Mm.
if He can distract you by making you want something more than what you want to see God's will be done, then He's done His job. I mean, lust, I think, is definitely not just entrapment, but I think it's to distract you from what's really important. I mean, like I said, if He can distract, if you're so worried, and lust, I think, comes down to selfishness too, because
Mm.
if you're not just lusting after the opposite sex, you could be lusting after a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
That person, they don't even follow Jesus, and they're driving what's that car, a Maserati or something, and you start wanting that, and then it's like, God gave me this, and it's paid for. So, and if He can distract you and get you thinking about other things, then He's definitely done His job.
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. Yes, it is it's the killer. It really is. Lust happens in many different directions, unfortunately. To keep things going, because it's already 10:42. At the to summarize, Job finally gets it, doesn't he? Job finally gets where he had kind of gone wrong with these accusations that he leveled toward God, with the questioning. I mean, there's nothing wrong with a humble question, is there? I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying, God, I don't understand what I'm going through. I need perspective. I need you. That's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that. What's wrong is, God, how can you let this happen to me? You get what I'm saying? That's an attitude that is the opposite of humility. That's me saying, hey, I don't deserve what I'm dealing with. You know what I'm saying? That's quite different. Job's reply says it all. Job 40, verse 4. Anybody got that? Job 40, verse 4.
Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer thee?
That's good. It was the A part that I wanted right there. That's perfect. It says, I am vile. He had spent how long defending himself to his friends? Okay? He had been saying, I didn't do this. I didn't do that. I don't understand why this is happening. God chose to pick on me, blah, blah, blah. Yet when perspective finally hits, what does he say? I am vile. That's me. That is so me. When I see how much I've ranted and raved over stupid little insignificant things in my life, and then God's like, here's some perspective. God, I'm vile. I'm vile. What shall I answer you? After all these questions are thrown at Job, he says, how can I answer? This is the absolute proper response when dealing with the Almighty God. Just as we are nothing in comparison to an amazing God, our problems, trials, arguments, and sorrows melt away at His presence. You can trust Him. He loves you, and He cares for you deeply. When trials come and the sickness kills, when all is lost, when we must choose to submit to God and God alone. See, just like we were talking about lust and how we need to, that it's the Christian killer, and lust happens in so many different ways, just like we were talking about, Ravi Zacharias and this, that, and the other. Really, what it boils down to is, Paul had a thorn in the flesh. Now, many think it was blindness because his writing got bigger over the years. But it could have been another physical ailment, or it could have been a spiritual ailment. He said he had prayed and prayed to try to get this thing removed. We don't know what Paul went through. We don't have a written description or a doctor's note specifying what he was talking about, this thorn in the flesh. And it could have very well been, something to do with lust. If that was the case, it's understandable how broken he would be, trying to preach and having these problems. It'd also be horrible to have to, deal with losing your eyesight. But really, lust blocks your spiritual eyesight, doesn't it? It gets you more, inwardly focused. You're thinking about yourself. We are to die daily to the flesh. The only way that Job could gain perspective was to put his finite thoughts behind him and die to his flesh and say, God, you're way bigger than this. You're way bigger than what I'm going through. To put off those things is just to truly submit to God in every way takes a lifetime of struggles. I mean, how many still struggling every day with something? It could be anger, whatever it might be. I mean, every day we have the opportunity to either choose to, crucify the flesh or to give in to it. I think most days I do a little of both. I will, sometimes, the kids get really rambunctious. An eternal perspective would rein them in like a loving mother hen and bring them in and say, children, let's try to be silent while we read the Bible. But instead it comes out a little bit more aggressive through higher tonal voice, tones of voice, and go to your room, something more along those lines. That's the lack of perspective showing. Oh yes, the look. That's the restaurant and church look. the where you have to be quiet about it. Yeah, amen. Anyway, when trials come, I've already said that. Anyway, the healing will not come every time you want it. The answers won't come when you think they need to. But God is in control. Do you really trust Him? Do you give yourself completely over to Him? God shows that He is intimately involved in all the intricacies of life, from the universe to the mountain goats. And you read that in His speech to Job. Trust the one that truly deserves it. The lesson about Job is a mirror of what we face today. It's human logic versus God, isn't it? Today we are, it's forced down our throat from, the origin of the universe, the evolution and all this other stuff, and how they feel like you should run your life, what's accepted in popular culture. And we are faced with the same thing that Job was faced with. Either I can listen to myself and I can think, oh, what am I going to do? I mean, why is this happening to me, or whatever? Or we can completely turn it over to God and gain that perspective and say, Lord, I'm vile. I give it all to you, and I want you to have your will. Job ultimately surrendered to God, and by doing this, he gained greater victory in his life than he ever could have imagined. Let's choose to be a part of God's story and not try to force God into ours. All right, your memory verse is Job 31, verse 4. Job 31, verse 4. When they call on us, do that. Let me hand out these crosswords. Y'all were so kind. Oh, you probably already have one.